Hi, my name is Lawrence Jones. I'm Vice President of International Programs here at the Edison Electric Institute. And today we are very honored to have visiting EEI Astrid Brunt from Norway. Astrid, welcome.
Thank you, Lawrence.
First of all, can you just tell us who is Statnett and what do you all do?
Statnett is the Norwegian transmission system operator. That means that we have three roles. We own and operate and develop the national grid. It's about 10,000 kilometers high voltage now. We are extending it. We are building a lot of HVDC interconnectors to neighboring countries, to the south, to Germany. We have one to the Netherlands, to Denmark, and we're also building west to the UK. The reason why we do that is that we have a lot of hydropower. Norway has 96% hydropower, and that is very compatible with the wind and thermal production that you have in our neighbouring countries. So that was role number one, to be the grid operator. The second role is to be the system operator of the system. In Norway, it's a bit different from very many other places in the world, in the way that we are the system operator for the entire system. So we make sure that anyone who's also connecting to the distribution grid holds the same standards as they would have in the main grid. So we are responsible for the system from generation until the many homes in the country, or to the many industry and all consumption. The third role we have is to facilitate the market. Norway was liberalized in 1991 as one of the first countries in the world. Maybe South America had, Chile was before us, UK almost at the same time, but amongst the very first. And market liberalization is a bit like democracy. It's not perfect, but of all systems to utilize the resources the best you can. The market system seemed to be the one creating most welfare.
So that's what Statnett is all about. So what do you do at Statnett? What's your role?
So I used to be the general counsel for 15 years, where I looked after, I was secretary of the board, and I looked after the legal department, purchase of legal cases. After these 15 years, I decided to concentrate more on the market, on the European connections, and on international issues, international affairs. Being in Europe from 2007, electricity became part of the European Union Treaty. Before that, the cooperation was only based on competition and on environmental issues. So there is a lot of legislation, sort of secondary legislation going on in Europe to try and harmonize. I think they try to harmonize more in Europe than they do in the US. You have more diversity here between different states or regions. The production structure in Europe is the same. It is very varied. That's not harmonized. Neither the national autonomy, but at the same time, they want the market structure to be harmonized. So I work a lot on that. But also we need to look ahead and be prepared. And that's what I'm quite passionate about. And that's partly also why I like to work with you and the innovators and the ones who are at the edge of the industry. That's very fascinating.
Well, I remember when I met you the first time, which was about probably 6 years ago. You were just opening your office in Brussels, I believe it was.
Yep.
And we met there. What have you seen in terms of the change in the industry between, when I met you 6-7 years ago in Brussels and now? What have been some of the major changes you've seen in the industry, especially in Europe with regards to the market?
I think the biggest change is the empowerment of the consumer and the production at the lower grid level. If you think about Germany, they're closing down their nuclear. They are some days running only on solar and wind, same as Denmark. So you're having a totally changed production structure. This new production structure is often connected to the regional grid. So that means that the regional grid operators have a different role than they used to have before. So instead of having a system that was designed top-bottom, you have more of a interaction between having a top-down and bottom-up system design, which in order to be successful, you would need to cooperate in a different way than you've done before. And the other effect is then that all the new renewable, that makes it more weather dependent. And I think for the system operation and for the preparedness, we need to be aware of that.
Talking about, are you done?
I can add one more thing,
Sure,
if you like.
yeah, sure.
And that is, everything is now IT.
Okay.
It's coming up from sensors on the equipment to smart meters, metering real time, to, I mean, it's coming down everywhere. So that's one thing of the IT. The other bit is that we have the e-mobility. We do not have gas distribution in Norway. We have electrical heating, and we have our phones that are electrical. So one thing I'm also thinking about and we are focused on is the IT security, because we are all now dependent on electricity. And I think it has been an awareness the last 5, 6, 7 years that the core infrastructure for the society is electricity. And we are more dependent on it and maybe more vulnerable than we've ever realized before.
No doubt. I mean, cybersecurity is a big issue globally, not just for, you mentioned Statnett in Norway, but even here in the US and elsewhere around the world, everyone is focusing on the importance of focusing on cybersecurity because it's part of the whole issue of resilience and vulnerability. Norway is normally known to many because of obviously their blessings of oil, but they also have this blessing of storage or renewables or hydro, which for many they see Norway as the battery of Europe. I've heard this saying before. Can you talk about what Norway is doing to take advantage of their enormous hydro resources?
Yes. The short story is that we sell when the prices are high and we import when the prices are low. The compatibility between wind and solar and hydro is very good. We have hydropower from multi-year magazines or with lots of storage facilities because it's high mountains. And that means that we can pump, but at least we can store, which we more often do. And then we can import and have off-take of the wind when it blows. They have even negative prices sometimes in Germany and Denmark because they have more wind than they consume. And they struggle with the system operation. And we can then import it. And when the wind is not blowing and it's cold, or on the peak hours, we can sell. And we have 3 HVDC interconnectors to Denmark and 1 to the Netherlands. And now we are building 1 to Germany and 1 to the UK. And the idea of these interconnectors is to take advantage of the business of compatibility between the different production structures, so that hydropower in Norway meets wind in Germany and in the UK. And also the UK, they get up later than us, and they are 1 hour behind us. So their peak load is after our peak load. So there is another advantage of the cooperation between the different states.
I think this is fascinating because I think this demonstrates, as was discussed earlier today at this Africa Utility Power Sector Exchange, that the issue of electrons are politically agnostic. And given the fact that Norway is not a former member of the European Union, the electrons from Norway gets to flow to the European Union uninhibited. So it tells you why electrons are great to have, because you can't stop it with politics. One last thing to talk about, I know for a long time you've been very much involved in the role of diversity and inclusion in the industry, looking at the role of women in organizations. Can you talk about some of the progress that have been made in Europe in terms of women serving on boards within the utility sector, and where things are going from your perspective?
Yes, Norway has been seen to be a front runner. We have, for the time being, a female Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Finance. So it's 3 women at the top. We do not have the same record on female CEOs, but that's coming with a new generation. I can see in the TSO industry now that we are having 3 female CEOs, which is very good. In Norway, they've had quite a few programs for females on boards and female in top management positions. I think one of the very good things about Norway is that you as a woman do not have to choose between being a mother and having a career. If I can take a story, a little detour.
Sure.
Way back, there was a TV team from Italy who came to see us in Norway when we had a program called Female Future, and I was part of it. And she wanted to come and film me to see that I had a life both at work as the general counsel and with the children at home, and that I could leave work to go home and look after them. And she was very personal and very jealous during the interview, because she said she had to choose between having a career with RII, the Italian television program, and being a mother. She couldn't have them both. And I think that privilege we have, if you look at demographics and the aging population in Europe, or maybe in the Western world, I think it is important that when we, with today's technology, want to promote women in boards or into senior positions, that we also facilitate and let them be mothers.
Well, one final question on that point. As you look out into the future and try to predict where we're going, and from your perspective, you're a lawyer,
yeah,
and you've spent a lot of time in this industry, so I can call you a lawyer/engineer now. What would you say to young people about the attractiveness of this industry, even if they're not engineers? Because now clearly you have a lot of non-engineers coming into the industry like yourself. What would be one advice you would give people out there looking for an industry? Why is the power industry an attractive place to work?
The future is electric.
That's good. It is electric.
So if you want to work in an industry that is meaningful, it's creating lots of good, it's enabling people to have a modern society and a good life, and it's the core of any industrial economy. I find that working in the electricity industry is doing a good job which is meaningful, and you can have lots of different aspects of areas where you work, but you work for something that's sound, something that's meaningful and important. And I think that is important for young people, and it should be important for all of us to work on something that we really believe in and that can make the world a better place.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Washington, and welcome back to EEI whenever you want. Thanks.
It's a pleasure. It's so fantastic to come and see you, Lance. Thank you.
Thank you.